Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm Miguel Dorati. I'm going solo today for the Lights Out podcast, but we got a real special treat here. We recently did one of our deep dives, Chris and the MMA Detective Mike. On our deep dives, we got Gary Myers, the hook and shoot veteran, IVC veteran, Battlecade veteran, and just an all-time great guy. He already took the deep dive. Gary's with us, and he's got Tom Erikson, who's going to be in one of our deep dives coming up here in very short order. I'm very excited to have Tom Erikson here, one of the most decorated wrestlers in the last 2-3 decades, really, in wrestling. And he crossed over to MMA and stuff, but the impact he made on wrestling too is still being felt today because he was at Gary's doing a seminar. How you guys doing?
Great. Awesome, man. We love having the chance to come on and visit with your people. This is awesome.
Oh, terrific, Tom. Man, it is great to see you. I met you once. I got to work with you a little bit in Abu Dhabi when you went there. I was one of the guys coordinating. I don't know, obviously very impressed with everything in your career. But let's talk a little bit about what you guys are doing today, the wrestling with the kids, because I know that's important to Gary too.
All right. Well, like I said, Gary does a lot of high school work, and he always likes to give back. Always wants his kids kind of learning and growing in the sport. So he's asked me, and I've come back and worked with his teams, but this time he asked me to come back. He brought another young, a college age kid to come back named Brock Muller. He's from Missouri, but I'm like, yeah, I'd love to come back. I want to set the table like we're kind of doing with our interview right now. I set the table with that by coming back today, and then I'm going to come back maybe September, December to help get his team ready for the team state tournament. So this was kind of like an introduction. When I lived closer, I was coming up once every other week or something like that to work with his kids and put his kids through a workout. But anytime I can give back in MMA or wrestling, I try to. If it's in the rules of what I'm doing, I'll give back. Love doing it.
Now, when you were starting to get associated with MMA, you were a coach at Purdue. Why don't you catch us up a little bit? Because I think you're coaching somewhere else now, and just get me up to speed too.
I'm at Duke University right now. Okay,
I
was at Purdue, and I left Purdue for a couple of years. I ended up helping Gary a little bit more then, and then I took over a NAIA program in Batesville, Arkansas. So I was the head coach there. I ran a women's team and a men's team. Had a couple All-Americans in both styles actually. And through different circumstances, I ended up coming to Duke. I talked to the head coach at Duke, and he asked me, hey, would you want to come here? And I kind of laid out some groundwork. I said, yeah, if I can do this, and this, and be director of operations, do some different things, I'd love to come. If you're interested in doing that, I'm in. And he wanted that, and he kind of agreed. He said, yeah, that's good. And so I'm the assistant coach, director of wrestling operations, I do all our travel. I worked on our schedule this year, did all our travel. I coordinate all that stuff to kind of make sure different things are going on within our program, and as well as coaching, man. I don't ever want to give that up, but so now it's at Duke. But I'm glad you mentioned Purdue. If you look at what my tree is at Purdue, and look, I can't take credit for it. I'll take credit only for the fact that I was there and I coached these young men when they were at Purdue. But in the MMA world, people might recognize a few of these names and the different things. John Fitch in the UFC, coached him at Purdue. I think he's in Bellator. Juan Archuleta was wrestling there. Well, I coached Juan Archuleta. A young man still out in California working out with AKA is Cash Quiroga. I think he's in TJ Jellishaw's camp, helping him get ready. I think Juan and TJ both helped TJ get ready for that fight. And so those are guys that actually weren't fighting then, but after I left and now they've kind of progressed, are fighting. Because back in those days when I was at Purdue, we had Gary Goodrich would come down, Wes Sims would come over, Mark Coleman would come over, and we'd have little training camps at Purdue with wrestlers and stuff like that. Matter of fact, probably Mark's time with me at Purdue is probably the extent of his jiu-jitsu stuff. Not that we worked it a lot, but Mark, man, he was a phenomenal fighter, but I don't think he opened up his skill set or was willing to open up his skill set. I don't know. You could talk to your MMA people, and they probably agree. Because, I think the worst thing that happened to him and even Kurt was they took away the headbutts. So it took away a little bit of the ground and pound for those guys. So you needed to branch out. I mean, but that was what make that time so cool of how basic MMA was then, and just to what it is now. It's so cool.
Are you a fan? Do you watch it now? Like,
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'll tell you this. This is crazy. I say this because our guys at Duke, they're enthralled. Like, man, you're on this podcast. I heard you on this. I said, you know what's crazy about all this? I am twice the fighter I was when I actually fought with half the body skills, the body to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just the stuff that I continue to learn, because, man, it's exciting. It's fun to understand, manipulation, understanding the guard and stuff like that. Because when I fought, I got dumped into it, had Rico Chiapparelli and the Raw team. We really young in that stuff. And that's why I'll tell you, the guy that I give a ton of credit to was Murillo, my fight with Murillo. In my career, that was a 40-minute fight. People kind of forget that. Some of the knock on, they talk about big guys, shape, we had a 40-minute fight, full action the whole time. Mm-hmm. So that was one, I think Gracie and Sakuraba was an hour.
Yeah.
Something crazy, ridiculous.
90 minutes.
90 minutes. I safely say mine was top 5 in terms of longest fights. I like to say higher, but 40 minutes, dude, that's legit. And people forget that. They're like, okay, and then the other thing I'm really proud of, I fought in the Tokyo Dome, which was 57,000 when I fought Skelton. I know the results, whatever, but I fought in one of the longer MMA fights on record, and I have fought in one of the largest venues in record, top 5, top 10 in both of those categories.
Yep, and we're gonna get into all that when we go deep dive with you, because we're gonna get you nerdy here. But so let me ask you, because with your wrestling pedigree, you had to see like the Russian invasion coming. You had to know what these guys in MMA were going to be facing with the Russians, because you've been wrestling those guys and you knew what they could bring with full dedication. Am I missing on that, or am I right? Were you sort of waiting for it?
Look, I mean, the Russians, man, even Cubans and some of the poorer countries, those communist bloc countries, they got a lot of good things, and they whatever else, they supplements or whatever, but those are some poor countries. Mm-hmm. So those dudes will fight you tooth and nail. The grit and toughness that they showed and dedication to what they showed. My only parallel to that, the equivalent of that, is my when I fought in the Contenders, and I was fighting Cossack in the Contenders. He had me in an ankle lock. Okay. And at that time, I was, I kind of make a parallel to the Russian. Break it. I don't care. I'm not going to tap. Break it. I'll get up, limp, and continue the fight. That's what the Russians are. That's what they're doing. They're going to fight you tooth and nail because it only benefits them. They don't have anything. And they're coming out here and making things and success. And that's why people have a hard time understanding Khabib. He's won. He's got the money and he's won and he's satisfied. He doesn't have to be like Conor, and that's why it is easier for him to walk away. But yeah, those Russians and the dedication and the training that they put in their minuscule way, what they had it's impressive. When you go over there, you're like, oh my goodness.
Now I remember meeting you at Abu Dhabi, and you were there with a jiu-jitsu coach. I don't recall his name, but he was also Nate Marquardt's coach. Am I missing on that?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, you mentioned a little bit about where Coleman and some of the early guys maybe missed out on jiu-jitsu. Talk about what your jiu-jitsu world is.
Well, my big tie-in with that was Rico Chiapparelli and the Raw team. And, back then in the early stages, that was still in the beginning and the early stages when Carlson Gracie, very, very perceptive, saw, look, we don't want you messing with the wrestlers. Even though they could have benefited, they knew what was happening. They didn't want us to pick up on that. So there was a really good divide on that. But Chiapparelli had a great in with Henzo, really good friends with Henzo, and really good friends with, relatives of theirs, California.
Hickson, Horion.
No. They were like a cousin or something like that.
Oh, the Machados.
Machado, John Jock, and yeah. So because Rico was a wrestler, but he's not a traditional wrestler, he had a really good tie-in with those guys. And, oh, by the way, I don't have an ego about this. I want to be good at it. And I had to reverse engineer this. So I got a chance to roll with those guys. Like when I say, I talk about that Murillo fight, that was my biggest education in the world. I reverse engineered everything. Okay, he's doing this. Why is he doing this? And I had to figure that out then. But I had a working knowledge of it going through Abu Dhabi and having people kind of teach me, this is why they're doing this to you. When you feel their hips shift this way, they're trying to isolate the arm. They're trying to do this. And I got to see it live, feel it, and I got it explained to me. And then I got to field test it as well. So it was learning by far, but it was an incredible experience because I've had arguments with Joe Rogan about this. He always said, this is an elite wrestler, this elite wrestler. I said, look, there's a difference. There's an elite wrestler, there's a world-class wrestler. That's a difference. A world-class wrestler can make the adjustments on the fly. Elite wrestlers are good because they do a skill set really good, and they can jam this skill set down your throat. But a world-class wrestler, Olympic level, world championship level, will make an adjustment in motion while he's there. He'll feel this. He'll be able to slip it and counter it and things like that. And there's a different level. There's a good college level, elite level, and there's really upset with Joe. And I would tell him, when they ever get a chance to talk, I said, why don't you clarify that? Well, they have an elite wrestling level. Like Stipe got very good. He's got very good wrestling level. He's not world-class wrestler. Mark Kerr, world-class. Mark Coleman, world-class. Tom Erikson, world-class. Stipe, he's an elite level wrestler. Okay, not even. He didn't win a national title.
Yeah.
I mean, Daniel, he was a national finalist, but he wrestled in the Olympics. He's a world-class. So he was able to make those adjustments and do those things. So I always had a bone to pick. And Joe and I would kind of bounce around with that stuff. But like I say, the limited training I had was incredible. I tried to suck it up like a sponge because I knew I didn't know. And I was hungry to learn what I didn't know and understand what are they trying to do and their concepts. And if you really kind of break it down and if you get them to talk to you and they trust you, you can find out the concept. Arona, Alameda, Ricardo Arona, Alameda. I got to know all those guys. Vitor, got to be really good friends with them. And that trip by itself was my really good break-in to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and the Jiu-Jitsu family. And that, knock on wood, that's kind of why, in terms of me, and I've had some success with Random and that Brazil Open fight, but that helped me tremendously with the Jiu-Jitsu crowd, because I was willing to learn from them and work with them. And we always, if you remember, they didn't do that very much with people.
No, absolutely. We always have an argument on the podcast or conversation about, Kerr versus Coleman. How would that go? And, there's a mind game too that's very important where that comes into play there. But I always thought Kerr separated himself, and you too, by going to do submission grappling, and Coleman stayed away from that. Talk about the mindset.
Stubborn. Look, if it ain't broke, why fix it? And I'm not complaining. But he won the UFC. He got to be in the UFC and had success in the UFC. And it wasn't until, Maurice got him and was it Pedro, the head kick and stuff like that, where he got exposed on opening up his game in the UFC, because the UFC had done a great job in transitioning and growing. But Japan was still in the niche, and we could talk about his work with Takada and how that went in, and then he got to the Grand Prix, the way the bracketing set up, etc. But look, Coleman, the difference between those guys, I'll tell you right now, the big difference between those guys, Coleman loved to fight. He's just a grinder, loved to fight. Kerr didn't love to fight. He didn't love to fight, but he was a more skilled fighter, more open, like you said, and a skilled fighter, and thus had more skill sets to go. But Coleman loved to fight. Kerr liked the money and liked all the accolades and the other stuff that went with it. So he was good, and he trained. He was an elite level wrestler, world-class wrestler, so he knew how to train. And when pushed, he hooked up with Bass. He trained and got himself to that level. But Coleman loved to fight. And there's a point in a fight, I would say, in a fight with Kerr and Coleman, that Kerr would feel it's not worth having this guy keep coming at him. So if you're asking me, which you didn't, but you kind of did, I'd take Coleman.
Yeah. Mark says exactly that same thing to you. I'm in his head, you know what I mean? And I think too, wrestling comes with pecking orders like that, Yep. Now, I before we cut it off here, because this is the pre-show for Tom Erikson's deep dive with Chris Lytle. But no, man, this is just a taste. I could stay on all night but we got to get Chris on here. We got to get Mike Davis, the MMA detective, on here too for the full blast. But I want to ask you, there were elite wrestlers that didn't do very well. Like I'll give you an example, Royce Alger. So being an elite super wrestler like Royce Alger, how can you can't argue his credentials. There were other examples. What
I'd argue with you is their attitude.
Okay.
Their attitude and mindset going in. They saw a guy like Coleman. Royce Alger was a world finalist. So yeah, you're right. He had great skill set. Kevin Jackson, Kenny Monday. Let's talk about all the elite world champion that in the finals of the world championship. They went in there. One, they saw the money and they saw, look, if these guys can do it, I can do it. If a guy like Coleman, a knucklehead like Coleman can do that, we can do that. So their stubbornness and their egos got them in. We're trying to cash checks that their bodies couldn't handle. And by the way, even and Royce will tell you too. I think I saw him, talking to Chael Sonnen about that. Royce's knuckleheadedness and not willing to understand, jujitsu and submissions. He got the absolute worst guy you could fight in Ensign, or not? Yeah. Ensign. Ensign armbar right away, and he thought he could just farmer, take him down, beat him up, and stuff. And it's just like, go ahead, do what you want. I'll win. I got your arm. Thank you. I'll snap it off. Thank you. And Kevin Jackson thought, boy, I can double leg and hold these guys down. And if they do that, nope, didn't work. Kenny Monday, he in the contenders, in the grappling event, he never got full MMA, but he went into grappling and he had Matt Hume, who just heel hooked him, ankle locked him, or something like that.
Hume got him, and Shamrock got the other wrestler that you got, Jackson, Kevin Jackson. So So it's a very interesting, everything there. Now, let me ask you a question. Could you have ever made 265, like the UFC Tom Erikson dream? Or is 265, you're just too big?
I could have made it. It would have been worth it. There'd have to be a plus minus, but I could. Back then, I was about 86. So 265 was doable.
Okay. Okay. So
right now I weigh 195 or 295. Sorry, 290. 195. Okay. I wish I weigh 295 right now, walking around.
Yeah, you still look. You still look in shape, and I'm so glad to have caught up with you. I want to thank you for your time. I know Gary's got a little post seminar party going down, right, Gary?
Yeah, so I was going to tell you, Tom just coached over a 6-hour clinic, so he's in great shape, and the boys were crawling out of the room to get out of there today. So I knew he outworked them, and they're 17, 16 years old.
Oh yeah, but that's that world-class stuff. That's the last thing that goes, because those old stubborn guys. Hey man, that's some of the best training that anybody's going to get. So Gary, I want to thank you for connecting the podcast back with Tom Erikson. Tom, I want to thank you. I'm going to be dealing with Gary, and we'll set up a time where we got a couple hours, and we're going to go deep with you.
Yep, and I'll make sure that he gets you my email so that we can start locking in that way and get the communication, stuff like that. I'll bring my computer. I have a camera set up. So this is good. I mean, I could talk forever and stuff. The great thing, people you got so many good stories. I said I'm older. I was around when they were putting this all together, and it's just I am so impressed of what it is now and from what it was then. And I'm proud of the things I've done there, but I sit in awe and watch what the sport is now, and curious to see what it's going to keep tweaking to. It's got a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and you're definitely one of them. As far as forefathers of the sport go, though, you definitely have a place there, and I'm very grateful for the time. We are going to have a deep dive with Tom Erikson. It's going to be great. I bet you we could do an hour just on Abu Dhabi. Were you there in '99? You were there in 2000, right?
I went twice. I had Abu Dhabi. It was at the Sheik's place.
Okay.
That's one, and then I went to Barcelona for that one as well.
Oh, okay.
Abu Dhabi, I beat Traven right off the bat.
Yep. And when you look at it,
I lost to Munson. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, well, Munson's a wrestler but Munson will pull guard on you too. So that was a fight we're gonna love going over with you.
Well, he would pull guard. Yeah, I'll stop man. I'm sorry. I can start kind of rolling them off and stuff like that. But
no, it's all good, Tom. And you know, I don't want to hold you back, but one of the things that we'll get into in the podcast too will be, I think, you know, if you went in 2000 and then again to Barcelona, which I think was 2009, you saw some evolution in Abu Dhabi just in the grappling end. So it'll be great to have your insight, because I know that here we got one of the top wrestlers physically that you were ever going to see cross over to MMA, a real fearsome specimen, but also a cerebral guy, a student of the sport, and now a teacher that we're going to love to take a deep dive with. Tom, thank you for your time, and we're off. Next time we see you, we're going to be talking for a long time. Thank you, buddy.
Appreciate it, man. Looking forward to it. Thank you.